So this is going to be the last portion of lecture number 10. In this portion of the lecture, I'm going to be talking about report level filters in web intelligence. Before I get into the report level filters in web intelligence, I want to make sure that everyone understands few basic things. So this is a report that I've already created. I'm going to go to data access and edit the query. So we know that this is the query panel, and in the query panel we can build query filters, right? So if I build a query filter which is for 2006, this query filter that is built, we can see it in the SQL right here. So this is where you can see the SQL. It actually goes into the where clause of the SQL, which means when I run this query, the data that comes back from the database is going to be filtered. So in other words, this filter that you build at the query level is applied at the query. Whenever the query is sent to the database, this filter is part of that SQL, and then that's what the database executes and returns. Okay. How about this filter then? So what about these predefined filters that are there? So if I click on predefined filter, double click on it, that also gets applied to the query filters, which means it is essentially going to do the same thing as this first filter did. The only difference between the two is this is something that I, the user, had to build. This is something that was built by the universe designer so that I do not have to create a filter every time. This is available as an option for me to apply whenever I want to. So if I go and check the SQL, you can see that in the where clause, now I have this second condition. Both of them essentially are where clauses. The only difference is this is something that the user built. This is something that the universe designer built, but the user applied. Okay. So end of the day, whether you have a query filter built by the user or you have a query filter applied by the user because it was available as a predefined filter option, these query filters get applied at the query time when you send the SQL to the database. Now, is it a good thing or a bad thing that you are filtering your query before you send it to the database? So it is actually a good thing. You ask any DBA that should you have filters before you send it to send your queries to the database, they will say absolutely yes. If you ever run an open-ended query in a production environment without any filters or without enough filters, you will get in trouble. Your DBA is going to be looking for you that who the heck ran this query which brought back 5 million records. So it is a good thing that you filter your data and do not bring back millions and millions of records in your report. Okay, so if given a choice, you must always prefer query level filters because query level filters limits the amount of processing that the database has to do, limits the number of records that the database has to generate as the result set, and then end of the day when the database finishes processing of this query, the database has to send the results back to your web intelligence report, and all of that traffic is flowing through the network. So this means less database processing, less number of records that the database has to generate as a result set, which means, of course, they keep the result set in the cache, so less usage of the cache, then less network traffic because the database then has to send the results back to the business object server through the network, which means if you are sending back millions and millions of records, that's a lot of traffic. And then if you're sending only 20,000 records back or 10,000 records back or 5,000 records back, it's less traffic, right? So from all of these perspectives, it is a good thing. Even from business objects perspective, If you have less number of records that are returned by a Webby report, you remember the concept of data cube or microcube? Whatever results are getting back from the database are stored in your Webby document, right? So if your Webby document only has 10,000 records, then your document is going to be smaller in size. If it has 10 million records, it's going to be bigger in size, which means opening the document is going to take long, processing the document is going to take long, any modifications that you are doing on the document is going to take long. So even from business objects perspective, it is desirable that you filter your queries before you send to the database. Okay, so for now that I've explained query level filters, I'm going to get rid of these. I'm going to run a query so that I can show you the next thing. So we already know about query level filters. Now we have already run the query, and now we are in edit report, right? So this is a report. Now there are certain options in business objects that allow you to filter the data after you have processed the query. Okay, so the query in this case already ran, it was open-ended. Can I filter something here? Yes, you can. So let's say I want to filter this state column. So the first thing is you have to select what you want to filter. And then if you go to Analysis tab, there is this filter option, and you can say add filter. So when you add a filter, it opens up this window where you can define the filter. So the first thing that you want to notice is that it says report filter, and then it is applied to block 1. So what is this block 1? So I'm going to cancel out from here, and I'm going to right click on this table, and I'll go to format table. And the first thing you notice here is that this table default name is block 1. Okay, so when I applied the filter, going back, when I applied the filter, it is telling me that this filter is applied at this level. It's applied at block 1 level. So if I say I want only Colorado, so it creates this condition, state in list Colorado, and you say apply, and then okay, it only shows you Colorado data, right? Now, one important thing to remember, let's say you applied this filter and you saved this report, and then 6 months down the road, you reopen this report and you're looking at the data, and then you looked at the query to see what is going on and you don't see a filter here, you probably are going to not remember that you applied a report level filter in the report, even though the query is open-ended. So the query is bringing a lot of records, but the records are not showing up in the report because you have a report level filter applied. So one of the challenges with the report level filter is that it doesn't keep any documentation in the report, or it doesn't display automatically that a report level filter is applied. You must remember to put some kind of note in the report that a report level filter is applied. So you can basically insert, as simple as you can insert a blank cell, and then you can mention something like, and then I'm not going to worry about formatting at the moment, but make the text smaller, get rid of the underlining and all of that. Right, and then, I mean, I don't have to do this, but you basically get the idea, right? If you are applying if you're putting a cell there, you probably want to make it small. And then I told you by default it kind of keeps a border, So you remove the border, right? So whenever you are applying a report level filter, the best practice is that you leave yourself some kind of a documentation so that you remember. The other option is there is a predefined cell available which gives a report filter summary, and you can insert that as well somewhere in the report. But honestly, it it is a lot of text. Filter on report one, filter on block one, state in list Colorado. So I mean, either you use this or you put something like this. You must have some kind of a documentation, otherwise you will forget yourself that there is a filter applied, and you'll be scratching your head. Why why in the world I'm not getting all the records even though there are no filters in the query, right? So um, that's one of the best practices. Now, um, we learned about applying the filter. How do we remove the filter? So you can go back to the analysis tab, and then you can say remove filter or edit filter to edit the filter. So if I say remove filter, it's going to get rid of the filter. Okay. All right. So we learned how to apply and remove report level filters. The difference between report level filter and query level filter is that query level filter filters at the query level when you send the query to the database, whereas report level filter filters after the query is executed and the results are in web intelligence. So given that we talked about it is always better to apply a query level filter, then why do we even need a report level filter, right? Remember, I told you that from web intelligence perspective, it's better to use a query level filter. From DBA's perspective, it's better to use a query level filter. From network traffic perspective, it's better to use a query level filter. So why do we need a report level filter? So a report level filter is used in some spatial circumstances. So imagine that you have a report for the countrywide sales, and you are a senior VP who has to look at the entire picture at once, right? So if you have to look at the entire picture at once, you cannot query. You cannot filter at the query level. If you filter at the query level, then you're only looking at one region or one state or something. So filtering at the query level is not ideal in my situation. If I am a senior VP and I have to look at the entire picture, I would much rather not filter in the query. I would much rather bring all of the data, and then I filter at the report level. So how do you do that? You can do that by so if I right click here and if I say duplicate report, and I duplicate report again, and then I name this, let's say I'm going to name it California, and then I'm going to name it Colorado, and I'm going to name this Florida, right? So right now all of them have the exact same data. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to first click in the report somewhere so that nothing is selected, okay? So click in the report somewhere so that nothing is selected. And I'm going to go to, say, add a filter. Now when I add a filter, remember this window, we saw it before, and now it's telling me report filter. Since I never clicked in the table, so it is by default applying this filter at the report level. Okay, so by default it is applying the filter at the report level. So if I say add filter, and then I say state equals to California, so now this first tab only shows me California data. Now the second tab, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to apply a filter at the report level so that I only see Colorado data, right? So I'm going to click in the report somewhere so that nothing is selected, and then I'll say add a filter. Again, notice that the filter, if I don't click on a table, it is automatically getting applied to the report, which is this tab. And if I say add a filter, state equals to Colorado. So now this tab is going to give me Colorado data only. And similarly, if I do the same thing without repeating myself, I'm going to filter this tab for Florida. So there are some spatial circumstances, as I said, if someone has to look at different salespeople or different stores or different supervisors or different managers all in one report, then I can use report level filters and then filter each tab for that specific either salesperson or state or region or territory, and still allow the user to view everything in one report. And then I can always, maybe the first tab could be um, all states, where I would go in and then remove the filter, right? So this gives me data of all states, and maybe I can right click on this table and then I can say turn into, I don't know how many states there are. Let's see how bad a pie chart looks. Well, it looks really bad. So I'm going to change it to a column chart, right? And then you can do the formatting and all of that. So maybe the first tab is all of the data, and then I have one tab for individual states. Okay, so this is a good use of report level filters. Now I'm gonna do a quick recap here so that everyone understands what exactly does it mean when you are filtering. So in Web Intelligence, you can filter at the query level or you can filter at the report level. If you are filtering at the query level, you can create your own filter by going into the query, and most of the times as an end user you can basically create your own filter. So one click is dragging an object here, second click is selecting select one of the operators, and the third click is selecting your operand. So fourth click is to make it happen, fifth click. So about 6-7 clicks you can create a filter, right? So if I am a user who has to use a filter over and over again in multiple reports, then every report it is 7 clicks to create that filter. Either I do this or I request one of the universe designers that can you create a filter predefined in the universe so that I do not have to do 7 clicks, I just drag it and be done with it, right? Both of these are serving the same purpose. One is created by the user, the other one is created by the universe designer. And the only advantage that the second one is providing me, the user, is that I don't have to do the 7 clicks to create a filter. I can just simply drag it in 1 click. Okay? But both of these are query level filters. Query level filters are applied at the query time. It's better to use query level filters unless you have some special situations, and those special situations are you are one of the users who has to see all of the data, and then you would like to see just one state, how this state is doing versus the other state and then the other state. So if that is the condition, if that is the situation, then you can always bring in more data into the report and then filter at the report. When you filter at the report, you can apply the filter at the block level and you can apply it at the report level. If you apply it at the block level, then if, let's say, if there are two blocks in this, I can insert a new table right here. So right now there are two blocks, right? If I apply a filter at the block level, so I'm going to go to the analysis tab, apply a filter. So when I apply a filter at the block level, notice that only this block is filtered. The other block is not filtered, right? So you have an option to apply a filter at the block level, or you can apply a filter at the report level. If you apply a filter at the report level, then everything in this report is going to get filtered, which means this block and then any other blocks. Okay, so I hope you understand the difference. So I'm going to get rid of this guy. So in this case, I have one report which has no filters, and then I have a few reports which have report level filters. So overall, you have query level filters and report level filters. Report level filters can be applied at a block level or at the report level. So I hope everyone is clear about this.